All right, so glad you're there. I'm in Washington, D.C., out of the snow, but I do feel bad that my family is once again digging out, but this time of 30 inches, largest snowstorm since 1996. And if you're not in the Northeast, you're saying, Brian, don't talk about the weather. I won't. But I will say a lot of people are in the Northeast, and they're trying to work their way through it. But it means I think the ratings will be even higher for the State of the Union tonight. At 20 minutes after, I'll talk about Republicans trying to gain momentum. Chairman Joe Gruters has taken over taken over the RNC. Let's see if he can get that momentum going. Very few people know President Trump better than Larry Kudlow, who worked in the first administration. He's going to be with us in studio, so that'll be great. And Senator Joni Ernst is standing by. Sadly, she's going to finish out her term and not come back. She would have skated to 6 more years. She's on Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Chairman of Emerging Threats and Capabilities and Rural Development and Energy. Senator, first off, what is your feeling right now about what the stakes are at the State of the Union? I think the president's got to regain momentum, don't you think?
I do think that, Brian, and I am excited to hear his message tonight because we know that Americans want to hear more about the economy. They want to hear about affordability and his efforts in that area. They also want to hear about the successes we've had in this first year of the new Trump administration of having a much safer nation and a stronger nation. So, Brian, if we talk about affordability, you know the state of Iowa really well. The Iowans that I talk to, they are concerned about energy costs. Gas prices right now are half of what they were at the high point during the Biden administration. So that's a good deal for Iowans. We know that our hardworking families are going to get the largest tax cut in American history. So while they haven't felt it yet as they get their tax returns in, they will start to feel it in this new year. He really needs to focus on that. But I want to hear him talk about the wins when it comes to our southern border and securing our nation. That is really significant. And then, of course, as we address threats abroad, we've seen the president with some really tremendous wins there, especially when it comes to Iran.
So let's talk about the ag community, which matters so much in Iowa. We know about what China did. Stop buying soybeans. It affected you guys directly in ag products. It bought them from Argentina. But that has changed. And he gave supplements to farmers for what they went through. Are things better for farmers? And what are their chief worries and complaints?
Well, their worries will always be on the trade front. And this is where I am excited about this administration because under President Biden, we had 0 new trade deals. That was devastating for our farmers. And we saw farm revenue start to decline in the second half of President Biden's administration. But what we have right now is the lowest trade deficit since 2009. And that's because President Trump and his trade ambassador, Jamieson Greer, have been working really hard on securing new trade deals for our farmers. Yes, China is stepping up. They have started purchasing soybeans from American farmers and in particular Iowa farmers. But there is more to do on this front. And we know that President Trump is not done fighting for American farmers. You know, having that supplemental income coming from the federal government, it is keeping our farmers afloat, but it's not what they want. They want the trade deals. They do not want the supplements coming in from the federal government. So President Trump is working on those new trade deals, and that's exactly what they want to see.
What other trade deals do you want? I thought China was primarily it, and I know the EU put it on hold, and that affects, and I know India would affect you guys. What other trade deals do you want coming down the pike or ratified?
Yeah, China is great, but it's not number one. For Iowa, our largest 2 trade partners are Canada and Mexico. And so what we want to do is make sure that whether it's a new version of USMCA or a greater continuation of that, is that they continue to purchase more products from the United States.
Have they stopped?
We still have a tip. They have not stopped, but we can do better. And I'll use dairy as an example. Canada does not purchase nearly enough dairy from the United States. We still have a tip in that area. India will be huge. If we can secure a greater market like India, and believe me, They want our products coming from the United States. That would be a boon. And then there's untapped markets still in Africa. And how can we get greater trade into Africa and Southeast Asia? So there's still a huge number of areas that we can dive into. And President Trump's going to do that for us.
All right. So I got to ask you about this before we get into possible war with your military background and armed services. The executive order the president signed has got the Maha community upset. Maybe you could tell me, it looks like it helps farmers. I can barely pronounce these words, but an executive order involving the Defense Production Act to compel the domestic production of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate-based herbicides. This is a chemical that the farmers need, but there's a belief in the Maha community that's making them sick, especially women. And the women feel as though they're being abandoned by RFK and the President of the United States. What's your message?
Well, what we know is that a lot of these products we do have to bring in from overseas. And if we can produce them here in the United States and use them safely as directed, then there should not be a health impact for our Americans. The key is using as directed. We know that we need certain herbicides. We know that we need certain fertilizers for our ag products. But again, using those under the proper guidance, you should not see health issues. But again, finding new ways to do farming, which we work on all the time in Iowa, it would lessen the need for those types of products. So not only do we need to invest in products that we can safely use, like the products you just mentioned, but also making sure that we continue the research and development into crops that are drought resistant, crops that are insect resistant. And that way we can feed and fuel the world's population and do it safely.
All right. Can we talk about the antics that might be at the State of the Union that we witnessed last time? Here's Senator John Fetterman with a message for his party. Cut 3.
I do plan to go to the State of the Union. And then I do hope all the other Democrats that choose to come, that we don't do the same kinds of things that happened at the last year. It was really undignified. And just the thing, no, I don't care who the president is. Don't yell and disrupt that. It's like you really should respect the office. You don't have to like the occupant, but respect that. And that's, we should be better than that. So for me, as a Democrat, it's just calling balls and strikes. And I'm always going to pick country over party.
So I don't really expect Fetterman to do anything, and he's not. But what do you think's going to happen with the pop sticks and the screaming and Al Green waving the cane? I know a lot are going to boycott this and do their own events. Senator Ernst, what do you think?
Yes, I think things have changed significantly since I first came into office, now almost 12 years ago. We don't see the level of dignity and respect given to the particular office holder when it comes to the President of the United States, when it comes to other speakers that come and give addresses. And I wish we could return to that. If you don't agree with the president, just stay silent or don't attend at all. But to interrupt a speech that is being watched by the American public, I think is really disgraceful. So let's try and carry ourselves with dignity. You don't have to respect the individual, but as John Fetterman so beautifully said, please respect the office.
So 47 years, Iran's been a problem against America, from the 83 bombing of Beirut to the Khobar Towers, to the killing of and maiming our people in the Iraq War, to the trying to assassinate the President of the United States. It's been nonstop. And the president has now put together a formidable military display to let them know your days are numbered, especially the slaughtering of your own people. But yet Democrats can't even get on board with that Iran is our enemy. Here's Congressman Jason Crow, cut 22.
Let's not forget that he campaigned on ending the endless wars that I fought in, that millions of Americans fought in. And this guy doesn't see a problem that he doesn't think he can bomb his way out of.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the president is very focused on preventing larger scale war. And so while we hear about the endless wars, and I also served in one of those endless wars, I was a participant in Operation Iraqi Freedom 1, 2003 to 2004. My daughter is a member of active duty Army. I don't want to see our sons and daughters engaged in endless wars. But if we can prevent them, and if we can prevent them through negotiation, very good. If those negotiations fail, then limited targeted strikes are warranted. I would support the president in this. We're not trying to engage in another endless war. What we are trying to do is take away Iran's ability to harm Americans and fund their forever terrorist proxy wars through groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. So I support the president on this. I know he's got a number of senior level military advisors that are giving him the best possible military advice. But what I would caution to the American people is that if negotiations do fail, what are we willing to do to protect the American population? Yes. I'm on board with the president.
Senator Joni Ernst, thanks so much. I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
God bless
When we come back,
Thanks,
you got it. Back at you. RNC Chair Joe Gruters. Don't move.
You notice, what word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won. I've won affordability.
If he thinks he has won affordability and the American people aren't struggling, bring that on. Campaign in each of those states and say it, because it's not the reality.
I think that he should rightly note areas where we've seen big improvements, while also addressing the fact that affordability is still a huge issue for many people across the country.
RNC Chair Joe Gruters here, listening to that soundbite. And, of course, that was the president, Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Democrat, and Congressman Kevin Kiley, who's got his hands full after redistricting in California. Joe, what about affordability? I think the key would be making Democrats explain how they'd make anything affordable, but it was smart of them to bring it up.
Listen, they don't even have a plan. Their only plan is to attack the president
and raise taxes.
And raise taxes. Look what Spanberger did. Listen, they're putting the person who Spanberger and the Democrats in Virginia, after they won running as a moderate, they've introduced all types of tax increases. But that's what you're going to expect. This Republican president, Donald Trump, has literally gone to bat for the average American worker. He's lowered, he's lowered taxes. I mean, look at the big, beautiful bill. I'm a CPA by trade. I talked to my fellow CPA partners back at home. Returns are up 15% plus. People are happy. But gas prices are down. Mortgage rates are down. Egg prices are down. The 4 years of Biden and Bidenflation were such a disaster for this country, but this president has done more in 1 year than most presidents could do in 8, and he's literally lifting that nose up now.
Well, how are you getting the trade message out? Because it was a devastating decision on Friday from the Supreme Court.
Listen, the president, I have full faith and confidence that the president and his administration can turn the corner on this. They have other avenues, other tariffs that they can employ. They've already employed one. And I think that we won't miss a beat. This president is, I think that it's obviously disappointing that the Supreme Court did what they did. But I have full faith and confidence in the president, his team's ability to reverse that course and put the.
You have very little success since the president won, and you took the Senate and the House. Why?
Listen, special elections are special for a reason. I think if you look at some of the states like Virginia and Pennsylvania, some of the elections that we've had, those are blue states. Anger is the driver of a lot of these midterm elections, and so the Democrats are angry because the president's making things happen. He's been delivering for the American people since he got into office, and they've been firing away. And my mission and my job is single focus. I have a single focus. That's to hold the majorities. And so just like in the Van Epps race in Tennessee 7, when it got tight, we jumped in there. We exposed Bain for being, she ran as a moderate just like Spanberger. But, we exposed her. We got Van Epps up and running, and we helped him win. But listen, we're prepared for the midterms. We have a chance to defy history. Only 4 times in the last 150 years has the incumbent party been successful holding power. We could do it because we have better candidates. We have better messaging. We have a better messenger in the president.
Right.
He's willing to go out there and barnstorm the country. We have more resources. And listen, we're doing things like I spent my almost entire adult life, 22 years, as a chairman of the party, going through the minor leagues of party politics. The way you can be successful is by focusing on the basics, and that's registering voters, turning voters out, and protecting the vote. And I will tell you, since I've been RNC chairman, Michael Whatley did a great job of setting the pace. But we have 114 lawsuits right now. We're taking the hammer anywhere we can on election integrity efforts, and we're trying to do everything we can to make sure we make it as easy as possible to vote, but as hard as possible to cheat.
So a couple of the areas in the Senate that you think you had the best chance to flip. One was New Hampshire. John Sununu had success before, Chris Sununu's older brother, and Scott Brown. You want to back who?
Well, listen, the party doesn't back anybody themselves. We let the voters choose, but the president has come out and endorsed John Sununu. John Sununu obviously has had the seat before. He's a superstar. He has a lot of firepower. He's raising the money that he needs, and I think New Hampshire, as a result of his presence in the race, and I always, if you have the president's endorsement, I always say that's a golden ticket.
So you had Rogers, Congressman Rogers, who almost won last time, like Dave McCormick almost won, Dr. Oz won, and then lost to Fetterman. You believe that Rogers has the best chance to flip?
The Rogers, I think, is our best opportunity in the country by far. He almost won last time, and you look at the dynamics. If you look at the basics, look what's happening in that primary across Michigan. Because of people like Mamdani and AOC having success, these left-wing wackadoo lunatics are pulling their parties so far to the left. If the general election comes and we have a credible, great candidate, Mike Rogers, I think he will be successful in Michigan. I'm very optimistic about his chances, and so I think the Senate is in great shape. We have you look at Whatley, you look at Sununu, you look at Rogers. Whatley's probably the toughest hold, maybe the toughest race in the country. He's going against an entrenched Democrat incumbent, but what I say about Whatley, the former chairman, is he's a workhorse, he's a grinder, he'll raise the money, and I think he'll win.
Are you going to encourage President Trump to endorse John Cornyn in Texas?
I think that, again, the voters ultimately have to decide, but listen, we have to win these races, and I always say...
He's got the best chance in the general.
I always say elect the most conservative candidate that could win those races. I always say you can't have Ted Cruz run in Maine, and you can't have Susan Collins run in Texas. We have to win these races. We have to hold the majority, and so for all the primary voters, choose wisely, and I always say follow the president's lead.
And how are you doing money-wise at the RNC?
We're absolutely annihilating the Democrats. We have $105+ million in the bank. Democrats have -4. That's going to be a much bigger margin once according to campaign limits. But we have the vice president as our finance chairman. We're raising tons of money, and we're going to win. Speaking of money, Larry Kudlow's next. RNC Chair Joe Gruters, thanks so much. Appreciate the time. Thank you, Brian. Back in a moment. We'll preview State of the Union.
But can we just admit here that regime change and nation building is not our core competency? That we spent 20 years, trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives. Both of them turned out poorly. I fought those wars. Again, millions of Americans fought those wars. The appetite for this type of military adventurism in the United States, when people can't afford their homes, can't afford groceries, is close to zero.
So that is Jason Crow, special operator. He is doing anything he can to be relevant and oppose a war that you watch what Joe Biden did in the Afghanistan. I didn't hear a word from Jason Crow. You watch what Joe Biden didn't do with Iran as they circumvented all the sanctions and allowed them to give China basically free oil and bring in weapons defense systems. And then you watch the whole our Israel war happen and Gaza happen, and then Iran attack Israel first. Not a word from Jason Crow. But now you have a situation where our enemy of 47 years continues to slaughter its own people and threaten the president with assassination while causing havoc in the region. And the president says, well, groceries are too high. Jason Crow doesn't want to do it. And you know who else doesn't want to do it? The UK. They came out and said, if you're going to attack Iran, that's against international law. You can't use our base in Diego Garcia, which we need. Harry Cole's with us now. He's a editor at large of The Sun in Britain and is in studio. Harry, your reaction to the UK abandoning the U.S.?
I mean, Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, is a lawyer by heart. He made his entire career as a human rights do-gooding type, helping some of the worst despicable criminals around the world escape the rope, getting them off of death sentences, even despite their heinous crimes. So it shouldn't really come as a surprise, as this guy who branded himself once Mr. Rules is a stickler for every single international treaty or law that supersedes.
So let me ask him,
sovereignty.
Harry, is it against, is Keir Starmer, did he like when those people were killed in cold blood, run over by trucks, shot in their beds?
No, I think they'll probably, as my understanding is, that the actual British military infrastructure and the British military are very keen to help their US comrades do everything they possibly can for the smooth operation of Diego Garcia. It's not just Diego Garcia as well, it's dozens of military bases in the UK, which would be a serious forward operating.
France said no too?
I mean, look at the pattern that's emerged over the last few months and the last year since Donald Trump came back to power. You had France and Germany and Britain actively undermine President Trump's peace negotiations in Gaza by declaring that they would recognize a Palestinian state. It's something very funny going on behind the scenes. I hear there was a very, very testy phone call last Tuesday between the Prime Minister of Britain and the President. Someone said there wasn't swearing, but there might as well have been. And that was when you saw the President take the True Social on Wednesday morning and declare he's pulling his support for this deal that Britain's trying to do to secure the future of the base of Diego Garcia. All is not well at the moment in the special relationship behind the scenes.
Right, but we're supposed to also watch the UK's back should Russia attack or anything happen there, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, look, key parts of NATO, the alliance of, it's in the sky, it's in the space, it's under the cables, it's everywhere. The British and American security alliance is incredibly deep, but it's also incredibly one-sided in the fact that, yes, most of their money is paid for by the United States.
So, Harry, let's talk about the arrest of Ambassador Mandelson, right?
Yeah, wow, yeah.
I mean, this is unbelievable. This guy's all over the Epstein files, but what are they accusing him of?
Well, it's a little bit like Prince Andrew is being done on this sort of ancient charge of misconduct in public office, which sounds very broad. It's a sort of catch-all corruption law that we have in the United Kingdom. It's actually going to be sort of grandfathered and phased out because actually it's so broad that it's actually sometimes quite hard to prosecute under it. Anything can be called up on it, but the bar of evidence has to be very high. Unfortunately for Andrew and for the former Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, as he is now, there's a paper trail because those emails are there. All that the British police have to do, and I understand they've already done it, is phone up the DOJ and say, hey, can we have the unredacted versions of these files? And there it is in black and white. They're passing sensitive government information, state secrets, if you will, about China, about Vietnam, about
To Epstein
directly.
So this is Andrew and Mandelson?
Andrew and Mandelson were both part of clearly an intelligence, an informal intelligence.
So this is not only, we're not even talking about the pedophilia.
No.
We're not talking about teenage girls. This is totally different.
Even if Epstein wasn't a paedophile, and they were sending this stuff to a financier who had clients all around the world who had loved an edge on what the British policy's trade towards Asia is. He was tipping Peter Mandelson tipped Epstein off about a 500 billion euro bailout at the height of the financial crisis. That is market sensitive information, open and shut. It's insider trading. Right. So while the more sort of nefarious and sinister and seedy side of the Epstein files, the pictures, the horrible dirty old man emails they were all sending each other, that's almost going to be discounted. There's very little evidence of it. I think we could convict on that, but it will be almost like getting Al Capone on their tax returns. It's the money that's going to get.
And tell me if I'm right here. Mandelson was suggested for the job by the chief of staff to Starmer. And when Starmer started getting some heat, the chief of staff says, even though he's been a long time aide to Starmer, he got fired. He quit, right? He's out. And Mandelson's out. Why is Starmer still there? I mean, what kind of schedule do you guys have on an election?
Well, there doesn't have to be another election in the United Kingdom until 2029, and it can be called at any time at the will of the Prime Minister.
When he thinks he's strong.
When he has a massive majority in the House of Commons. And what is keeping actually Starmer in his job is lack of an obvious successor. All of the people that could step into the job are flawed in a slightly different way. His former deputy is under investigation, or got caught not paying enough tax and had to resign. His biggest rival in the Labour Party is the mayor of Manchester, who's not in the House of Commons, so can't stand. So he's there, he's in office, but he's not in power. If that makes sense.
So we're talking to Harry Cole, editor-at-large of The Sun. So what about switching? In other words, the Labour is in control. And if anybody was to replace him, it would be another Labour candidate, a left-wing candidate.
That's right, yeah. And I think there would be immense pressure to go to the country, though, because they would need their own mandate. Governments that resign in disgrace often have to seek out their own. The next person that comes in would want to have, would want the backing of the country. But again, if an election was held in the United Kingdom tomorrow, Nigel Farage would be the Prime Minister. And the one thing that unites the establishment and the established legacy parties in the United Kingdom, the Conservatives, Labour, Greens, Liberals, is they want to shut Nigel Farage out. And so I see
Does he want it?
Yeah, he's up for it.
So what about Rupert Lowe?
So Rupert's an interesting character. He's quite a hot-headed guy, right? He was a member of Reform. He's a very successful businessman. He was a former chairman of a football club. He's an interesting character, but the idea that he has the recognition, the depth of support. He's got Elon Musk's support, that's for sure, and he remarkably gets a miraculous amount of.
He wants to make UK great again. He sounds like Trump.
Yeah, but he is at the end of the day still a fringe figure. The right across the world always do this. Just when they're on the cusp, possibly on the cusp of a revolutionary change in direction for Britain, they all fall out with each other. It's almost like the hard left used to do as well. I mean, they should all be firing in the same direction. This is bigger than personalities.
It should be Nigel Farage.
It should be Nigel Farage is one of, if not the most successful on paper politician of the last 20 years. He is a man that single-handedly fought in the trenches of getting Britain out of the European Union. If it wasn't for him, it would never have happened. He was going to improve rights again and again. He was calling out illegal migration, legal migration numbers years and years and years before any.
And he led Brexit.
And he led Brexit, and he got Brexit. And when the Brexit happened, they shut him out.
Do you think the majority of UK citizens regret Brexit?
I think you can find a poll that will say anything. The people that lost that battle will never let it go. They're like the Japanese warriors at the end of the Second World War. They're still fighting.
It's gone.
It's gone. They're fighting a battle that's 20 years old. They lost. They got thumped fair and square, and they will never accept the result. So they will find a way of always trashing it. Brexit was about more than just leaving the European Union, though. It was a howl of rage. You can draw the similarities back in 2016.
They don't want to be run by Brussels.
They don't want to
be run in London.
They want to be run by someone competent. And the EU was always a very useful bogeyman for blaming all our problems on the EU. And actually, the problems are structural, and the problems are in the UK. And people have been ignored for too long, told to shut up, accept what's going on, accept mass migration, accept high taxation, and be quiet, turn up, do your job, go home, and be woke. And you know what? People just said, enough of this.
Yeah, and the fear was you're going to lose your banking system. Have they left?
No. I mean, London is always going to be uniquely placed as a English-speaking, well-protected legal system that is halfway between the two worlds, right? London is a perfect clearinghouse for the financial system because it's halfway between America and Asia, and it will always have that money going through it.
Are you worried about losing Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland?
Scotland's always going to be a sort of running sore for the people that really, really, really want Scotland to be independent. This is bigger than anything in politics to them. However, I do think the compelling argument for staying in the United Kingdom, especially in this dangerous world we live in now, fracturing into smaller states, I think the security element and the economic elements will always outlast the historical Braveheart elements.
Do you think your UK citizens and European citizens and Irish now are understanding what they've done to their country with massive immigration? Some illegal, some legal, allowing this and seeing them losing their identity, and they're prepared to push back. Could we see a backlash?
Yeah, I think we're living it. We're seeing it. I think actually the public were well aware of this many years ago, And it's now finally the politicians that are waking up, the political elites, the media classes that are silently, who've spent 20 years telling anyone that raised concerns about the fact that they're
You're a racist.
Exactly, Brian. You hit the nail on the head.
Xenophobic.
And suddenly, actually, people are realizing that, yeah, fine, call me words, call me names, I don't care. I care about my country, I care about my family. They can't get a doctor's appointment, they can't get their kids into the schools they want. You can't have 1 million people a year legally arriving in a country of 60 million.
Who don't want to be British citizens. They want their own society in your country.
Even if they did want to, is it even possible at that level of mass migration to assimilate? It used to be that there'd be one family on a street or a couple of families on a street who would arrive from a different country, a different culture, and they'd have to assimilate because they would be living in a neighborhood that was very different from theirs, and if they wanted to speak to people and talk to people, they'd have to learn to speak English. Right. When tens of thousands of them are arriving every week, they're just going to talk to each other.
But have you reached the point where this is going to be an organized pushback to get your identity of the country?
Yeah.
Ireland's a travesty. And now the UK, I see things on the web, on social media, that there's organizations pushing for British identity.
Yeah, look at the protests. Look at the protests that are erupting around hotels and former military bases where they're hosting illegal migrants. And then just look at the very simple backlash that we saw in the UK last summer. People just quietly putting up English flags, putting up Union flags. And you know what? No one screams blue murder when people are putting up Palestine flags and Gaza signs across inner cities of England. But then you put up your own flag and suddenly, oh, it's racist. But actually, you know what? People just quietly giving the system
that's going to be the Trump legacy, if nothing else. It's going to be okay to be prideful of your country. And the world government is done.
Yeah.
Harry Cole, thanks so much.
Ryan, always a pleasure.
Editor-at-large of The Sun here in D.C., but it was also about his heart's in Britain. All right, back in a moment.
Don't go anywhere. Brian Kilmeade will be right back.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech.
So that is Gavin Newsom. Yeah, so that is Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom talking to a mostly black but mixed audience, to a black mayor, seems to be saying, I'm dumb like you, and I can't read like you can't read. So there was immediate backlash, and I could bore you with all the responses, but the defensiveness afterwards is just absolutely insane. And then, of course, more cursing. Here's the question. More cursing back, and he said, how dare you, and all this stuff. And, of course, blame Trump. What are you talking about? And went after Sean Hannity, saying you didn't go after Donald Trump when he retweeted that election thing that had Barack Obama and Michelle as apes. And we already know that was a mistake. He didn't watch the whole thing, put it forward, and took it down. All right? Having said that, we didn't need any saying. Everybody else saying it. But Gavin Newsom, instead of saying, wow, that was inappropriate, and here's what I meant to say, goes after people like Sean Hannity and President Trump. Meanwhile, Susan Crabtree has an interesting take. She's from Real Clear Politics. She says, how do we know you have dyslexia? How do you know can the governor provide any paperwork related to his dyslexia diagnosis at any time of his life? And Newsom's comms team just said, hey, thanks for the inquiry. Respectfully, F off. Do you believe this? That's the comms team. That's the wordsmith that's supposed to be able to get you out of trouble, be a crisis manager, be able to have a fulfilling message that's going to make sure that he is president worthy. Because we all know as governor of California, he's not worthy. Do you know his latest antic? California allocated $35 million for supporting illegal immigrants amid Trump's mass deportation. They wanted to go the opposite way. Hey, Californians, you're buried in debt. Your taxes are through the roof. You have the highest gas prices in the country because they're folding in all the taxes as gas decreases. And now you can't have a gas car in 5 years. And now $35 million to support illegal immigrants who already are knocking you out of emergency rooms and knocking you out of your health care, affordable health care. So that's what we're looking at on the political front. And then AOC, of course, had that meltdown over the weekend with her boyfriend or fiance sleeping next to her. She goes off. Obviously, she's rattled to the core over a horrible performance over in Munich. She came out and said this, cut 30.
If you think that I don't understand foreign policy because out of hours of discourse about international affairs, I pause to think about one of the most sensitive geopolitical issues that currently exist on Earth, I'm afraid the issue is not my understanding, but rather the problem is perhaps you've gotten adjusted to a president that never thinks before he speaks.
How great is this? She's got the guy, the fiance, snoring next to her, doesn't even hear it. I don't know if she was drunk or what. I mean, James Woods thinks she was, but she's just coming out there. Obviously, she can't sleep because she knows how she's screwed up, and people know that she doesn't put the work in ever for anything. All she is a social media maven. She doesn't know substance. Where is her policies? Why do people just say you're worthy of being president because you're good on a microphone? But it's what you say and achievements that should matter at some point. Hey, I'm excited. I'm here in Washington, D.C. A lot is going on. State of the Union, hours away. We'll do the wrap-up tomorrow. I'll be in this very studio in D.C. wrapping up the president's impactful speech. It'll probably be over 90 minutes. He said, hey, guys, it's going to be long. I have a lot to say. And he also has to get momentum back. The momentum that he lost after Friday's Supreme Court decision that we knew was imminent. I think it caught a lot of people, including me, by surprise. But the ramifications and the plan B is in action. And Democrats, according to Axios, they're giddy with the opportunity they say they have to represent small town and small business America and ask for refunds. With me right now is Jason Miller. Jason's been just about everywhere in this administration, again, helping out wherever he can, above and below the fray. And Jason is the former senior advisor to President Trump, is quite busy now in D.C. Jason, from what you know, from the sources you can reveal, what do you think will be in the speech tonight that will make it stand out?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have to rely on sources. I actually had the opportunity to...
Yeah, just hit on. Do you hit on? There you go.
Okay, so the on button, which is very important to radio.
So I don't need sources. That you could be you.
Yeah, don't have to worry about sources. I was with the president this weekend as he was perfecting his State of the Union speech. And to sum it up, I would say 12 months, total transformation. You're going to hear the president talk through everything that he's done in the first 12 months, how that's impacted people's lives. But I think what he's going to do is continue. I shouldn't say what I think. I know what he's going to do is continue to use the guests in the gallery to help reinforce the messages that he's making. He's really elevated this, I think, to an art form where he can connect those human experiences to people and how that matters in their everyday lives. So as we talk through the economy, which is really priorities 1, 2, and 3, but we talk about everybody who is impacted under the previous administration, whether it be angel families, whether it be people in other countries who are suffering from dictators, whether it be people who are looking for what's that brighter future, what's the education moment. But to the point that you were talking about a little bit earlier, it's the economy is really what's most important, and the president's going to lay out the vision of how we continue to get there.
And also, what blows me away, and I watched the Washington Post ABC poll, and he has below 50% on foreign policy. And I thought, you might want him to put time on the economy. But what sober human being could notice what he did in Gaza, could see what happened in Venezuela, notice where Cuba, for the first time since the 1960s, has a shot at freedom. And the president's basically given this guy the last chance for an off-ramp. And then confronting our enemy of 47 years, and that's Iran. At the same time, trying to move Gaza forward in a tiered step towards peace and rebuilding. I makes me think that in America today, Democrat or Republican, you will never get 50% on almost every issue. Do you feel the same way?
It's look, with the partisan news environment, you automatically have a big chunk of people who are with you, a big chunk who are going to be against. And then it's moments like these, like State of the Union, where you have the captive audience, where you have the pomp and the circumstance of the formal State of the Union. It's that one time a year when a president of the United States can really hold everyone's attention to talk about what they're doing. And you're right when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, this is ultimately the president of peace. He has, 9 peace deals already. We saw from the previous administration, we had the Abraham Accords, no new wars. So we know from past experience he's been able to get it done. Obviously, we have a couple of big ones that are still out there when we talk Russia and Ukraine. Also, when we talk about make sure the Middle East, that we get this Gaza deal to hold in place. But it's only at events like this where the president can really communicate that without the, I'm probably not supposed to beat up on the competitors on the air, but you know who they are, without them continually chirping or carping at him and trashing everything that he's saying. So going directly to people, and also keep in mind, Brian, here's the important point too, is that yes, there'll be people who are watching live, but TikTok, Instagram, the sound bites from the speech or what will live on, that's actually how most Americans will consume this.
So I want you to hear what Ari Fleischer said to me on One Nation about what he would recommend. As you know, he knows communications, and he also knows communicating in tough times, as when the Iraq war was going sideways. Cut 10.
I think he's got 2 jobs ahead of him. One is to ring that patriotic bell. Bring our country together on the themes of patriotism the way only a president can in that grand forum. 2, don't over-brag. Don't tell the American people that you hit a home run when you hit a double. The American people know the difference. Prices are down in many areas, but they're up in some areas. There's a sense of unease still. As much as there is room, legitimate economic room for optimism and growth in 2026, don't tell everybody it's a home run, it's a grand slam. Don't spike the ball until the ball is across the end zone.
So, have you said the same thing?
Yeah, in my own words and my own way, but Ari's a pro, and he hits it exactly. And that's why tonight, when you talk about the unifying themes, America's 250th anniversary, that will be a big theme.
He's going to bring that up.
That will be brought up a lot tonight. And some of the guests that he's bringing in that connect to that very vividly in emotional terms also will be there helping to communicate that story. It's a unifying thread that runs throughout the entire speech, both in the reminding people where we are, but then also what the rest of this year is going to look like. And Ari also was spot on when he talked about what makes a difference in people's lives. As I mentioned before, electricity rates, healthcare cost of prescription drugs, making sure that your streets are safe, how purchasing power is increasing, how inflation is going down, jobs are going up. All of the things that impact the regular person who wakes up every day, puts on the boots, heads into work, and maybe doesn't necessarily want to read the New York Times or watch a 7 a.m. news show. But what they do know is how much money's in their paycheck and how much they have at the end of each month.
Jason Miller, communications expert, is my guest in studio here in D.C. So, Jason, it's 2 things. The numbers, you could look at different and say they're skewed, but for the most part, the polls are pretty accurate that shows he's lost ground with Hispanics and independents. If I was to give you the president as a client, I know you know him as a friend too, why did the numbers fall, and how can you correct it?
Yeah, and this isn't the most complicated thing when you look at the polling.
Because it affects the midterms.
It does affect the midterms very much. It's not, you don't need to overcomplicate it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that any of the snapshot polls that are going on right now are snapshots. And the voters who are maybe they've moved to the undecided, maybe they're not as passionate about what's going on because they hear all the negative information. Democrats are essentially only renting them right now. And it's on the issues of economy and even to a lesser extent, even immigration. We've gotten off track with some of the visuals with regard to some of the immigration enforcement. Despite the fact that the president's record has been fantastic, people aren't hearing that enough. They're seeing some of the images that all of us wish we weren't seeing. So as the president continues to focus on the economy and focus on the actual border and creating peace all across the world, those voters are coming back. Now, the challenge going into the midterms is that President Trump isn't on the ballot. We're going to need candidates who are out there, both for the Senate and for the House, who are speaking in ways that communicate with voters that can't sound like Washington politicians. If you go in and you're talking about, well, here's what I did for HR 2512, people are going to tune that out in 2 seconds. What people want to know is that they know that things were going terribly under Biden. They want to know specifically what you did to improve their life. And then also, here's what you're going to do going forward. And you have to be able to communicate that in very personal terms.
So you guys got in power now, unlike when I was talking to you leading up to him winning the election. But I think one of the key things Republicans have to find a way to do is make Democrats explain what they would do different. It's easy to say affordability, but please tell me your plan. And I don't think any of them have one. We're going to raise taxes. We're going to do something for the. What are you going to do for the little guy? Like, what is the plan to grow the economy? I mean, Joe Biden used to make up stories about trickle-down economics. President Trump never talked about trickle-down economics. So how do you get your opposition to reveal their game plan?
Well, so this
or
is
talk instead of blame Trump.
This is another thing where the president is the Michael Jordan of working these State of the Union speeches, the greatest of all time, because he knows there are these moments where Democrats have to make a business decision. Do they stay seated or do they stand up and cheer? So as we talk about a number of these unifying themes or specific policies that make a difference in people's lives, or there are even a couple of things I'm not sure if it's been teased out, so I can't share every detail. There are a couple of absolute tearjerker moments where you just, for even basic human compassion, how could you not stand to be with the person that the president's recognizing?
Correct that this time. You wouldn't stand for Jocelyn Nungri's family, for Laken Riley's family? Don't you think, looking back, they said that's kind of stupid?
Yes, and there are a number of instances tonight where, again, Democrats are going to have to make a business decision. If they stay seated, they will look inhumane, callous, and against everything that America is for. Nobody else can present that binary choice like President Trump.
Right. USA Hockey. If you don't stand for USA Hockey, come on, man.
So this is where we get into the fun zone, because this was so cool. One of the coolest things I've ever been able to do when I was with the president, I was in the room with him when he spoke with the team, and Cash called and put it on speaker, and all of us there in the room could hear, and of course it was recorded on the other end. But to hear the cheering, the excitement, the immediate post-game euphoria, and when the president invited them to come to State of the Union, they're all yes, and they're cheering. So they're going to be there tonight. I'm not sure exactly how many, but I think pretty much the whole team is going to be there. And what happens exactly there, I think, that's all up to President Trump. How exactly he does that, but I know it's going to be pretty spectacular, and that's going to be right up near the front of the speech. That is going to be one of the telling points of tonight.
Because these guys got games tomorrow. These guys have games tomorrow. Well, they got to go back to work.
Now, here's the thing to remember, though, is keep in mind they're not coming in with the full pads. Now, I thought it would be cool if they came in with the pads and they just tackled the Democrats and maybe a little body check to crying Chuck Schumer. That would have been at 11. But they're going to be there. It'll be a powerful moment, very powerful moment.
Jason Miller, thanks so much. Best of luck. Look forward to, I guess, you going back to the White House to help out a little?
Yes, sir.
You got it. When we come back, this guy named Larry Kudlow, one of Donald Trump's most respected confidants. Don't move.
I think the American people want to hear about the progress we've made, and I expect the president will give a progress report, but also hear about the agenda going forward, what else the president and the Republicans in Congress want to accomplish. And I think the president will lay that out very clearly, which will frame the midterms. The midterms are really going to come down to a choice, Trey. It's a choice of going back to the time when Democrats were in charge with Joe Biden, when we had $5 an average gallon of gas. Now it's under $3. When we had interest rates to buy a new home at a 30-year mortgage at almost 8%. Now you can get them under 6%. All of these things are going in the right direction.
So that is James Blair, the Deputy Chief of Staff, and he's the political guru. Let's bring in Larry Kudlow. Larry, the theme tonight, your good buddy, the man who used to work for President Trump, has got to deliver today. He's got to get momentum back after that decision from the Supreme Court. What do you think about what James said, and what would you do?
Well, I think James is right. I mean, I just talked to James actually on the show, but I think momentum after the tariff, after the Supreme Court, I don't think that matters. I doubt if he's going to spend much time on that. He still has tariff authority. It's just the Supreme stuck their nose into something they shouldn't have stuck their nose into, and made things messier than they need to be. The reality is he's protecting American businesses, and he's opening up American markets for American businesses, and he's picking up manufacturing. He should emphasize the very good economic news, okay, and talk about one big beautiful bill and how that is helping middle-class people and working folks. of, all stripes, all colors, all denominations. That's really what he has to. And I think that's exactly what he will do. I mean, I sat with him, last week or 10 days ago. We sat for an hour and talked about that. And, he's got, for example, and he knows these numbers, and I hope the heck he uses numbers. He's very good at it. I hope it's in the speech. You're going to get about a $4,000 tax refund, Brian. And you're going to get a tax cut. Individuals will get a tax cut of about $3,000 or so, middle-class tax cuts. It's over 1% of GDP. I mean, take-home pay is going up and inflation is going down. Prices are going down. My favorite is egg prices, which are now down about 35% from a year ago. I remember the great egg crisis. Those are the things I wanted to talk about. Economic prosperity. The stock market is close to 50,000. So many Americans, 135 million people plus, own stocks one way or another. That's the stuff he should talk about. Very upbeat. Here's what we've done. Here's how we're going to follow through. I mean, he'll have some bells and whistles. There'll be some additional things announced. I don't know what they all are going to be, but that's the essence of the speech. Joe Biden created an economic affordability problem, and I am fixing that problem and solving that problem on America's 250th anniversary.
So the ABC poll says 64% of the country don't like the tariffs, and the court overturned 70% of his tariffs. Do you continue to pound that, or you just talk about the trade deals? Like, you got to be tactical and not clinical.
Talk about the deals. I mean, it doesn't matter. All those things you mentioned, 70% of the tariffs, he's going to put a 15% tariff, Brian. That will recover the whole situation. But
is it jeopardizing the trade deals, Larry Kudlow?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think so. Look, Europe says the deal's on. Japan said the deal's on. I guarantee you, India will say the deal's on. So I don't think any of that is going to change. And he's got
the EU is in a delay of game.
Is in a what?
A delay of game. They said they're going to wait 4 months.
Well, okay, they're going to wait 4 months. Fine, let them delay. That's not State of the Union stuff. Okay, generically, big picture wise, okay,
got it.
He's still protecting America with. He went to another authority and put a 15% tariff on, which is for all the countries, which is almost what the effective tariff rate was before. They're almost identical. And they'll have that authority for 150 days until he can sort through some of these national security issues and some of these 301 unfair trading practices. No, what the Supreme Court did was muck up a perfectly good tariff regime that Trump used for foreign policy as well as economic policy.
Yeah.
I mean, I blame the Supreme Court has done this. In my opinion, the Supreme Court has done the country and the policies a great disservice by putting their nose into something they know virtually nothing about.
Hey, Larry, I got 30 seconds left. Who's on your show? Who's on your show tonight?
We're going to be led by Speaker Mike Johnson. We're going to have a number of senators, a number of House members, but the Speaker's going to lead it off, and he'll give us his take on it.
4 o'clock on Fox Business. Best in the business, connected to the administration better than probably anybody I know, who has the thorough respect to the President of the United States. And you're still helping the country in your special way. Larry Kudlow, thanks so much. I'll see you in the Bureau.
Yes, you will. I'll be there. All right, buddy.
Go get him, Larry. Hey, we'll take a time out and come back with more special guests. Victor Cha is going to be with us. If you want to unwind what's going on in China, you want to find out what we should be going from here, that's where you go. You are listening to the Brian Kilmeade Show, Washington, D.C. Don't move.
We're
obviously disappointed with the case, which was wrongly decided, but the president and President Xi have developed a very strong and stable relationship. Scott Bessent and myself, we've established strong relationships with our counterparts. Our deals were not premised on whether or not this case remains in place or not. As you mentioned, we have a variety of tools. We've had tariffs on China since 2018. Even now, the average tariff on China is still about 40%. We have other tools if we need to use it. The point isn't trying to fight with China. It's really to have stability for those soybean farmers you mentioned, for people who are selling aircrafts and medical devices, and folks who want to be able to import some things we can't get elsewhere from China. And we're still on track for that. The meeting in April is still on track. We think it'll be very successful.
Jameson Greer weighing in on the crisis management that they're doing now because of that Supreme Court decision and how it affects the China visit. And there's going to be a follow-up visit if all things go well here. I'm sad to find out that we're holding up our weapons shipment to Taiwan just to make sure the March visit goes well. Taiwan needs to be a porcupine. That's the phrase they use. So China knows if they go in and try to fight a war, they haven't had a war since 1979, that they're going to get a lot of resistance and it's going to be trouble. And we're going to hopefully watch their back. Dr. Victor Cha knows all the machinations of the region. He's got a brand new book out called China Weaponization of Trade Resistance Through Collective Resilience. He's the Distinguished University Professor at D.A. Young, SF, Endowed Chair in Government International Affairs at Georgetown, as well as President of the Geopolitics and Foreign Policy Department and Korea Chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and a former Director for Asia Affairs at the White House National Security Council. Victor, congratulations on the book.
Thank you, Brian.
I think when people think about weaponization of trade, we think of China not buying our soybeans and China not selling us rare earth. Is that an example?
Yeah, those are two very good examples. Basically, they take what is normal trade interdependence and they weaponize it for political purposes. And they've been doing this since 1979. We've documented over 600 cases, and it's really heightened under Xi Jinping.
WHO bringing them in, big mistake?
Into the WTO, yes. It was probably a mistake at the time, but at the time there was this prevailing assumption that China, as it got rich, would eventually become more like us. And so, when they weaponized trade, we put up with it saying, this is just a bump in the road. In the end, there'll be a good news story to come out of that. But clearly China got rich and the CCP is still in control. They haven't politically liberalized, and they're not following the trade rules.
So so in your book, you categorize and you list and explain all the times China used trade against the world. How did we allow ourselves to let them control our pharmaceuticals? How did we allow ourselves to let them control rare earth? What was the West thinking? Because it wouldn't work to anyone's advantage, and we have plenty of these same resources ourselves.
I think there are two reasons. The first was this faith in globalization and just-in-time supply chains. It was trying to get the cheapest production costs, and often that ended up being in China, and we never really thought about trade disruption. The other was this view that, again, eventually that as China grew, it would be more of a responsible stakeholder in the international system, and therefore we could countenance a single act of trade coercion every once in a while, because in the end, China would become more like us. That clearly was not the case. That clearly has not been the case. But now we find ourselves in the position where our supply chains, many of them are compromised. And this really became clear during COVID, when so much, as you said, of our medical supply chains and PPE supply chains were dependent on China, and we saw a disruption, and we didn't have a good answer. But many governments,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that just many governments around the world are well aware of it. They've all appointed economic security point people, and everybody is trying to shore up their supply chains now because they know this weaponization is not going to stop.
Look at Japan. What have they done to Japan over the last 6 months?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got a new prime minister in Japan. Basically, all she did was restate existing Japanese defense policy when it came to Taiwan. And China is carrying out a full court economic coercion against her, not importing Japanese seafood, not allowing tourists or students to go from China to Japan, a variety of things of this nature. And also on heavy rare earth minerals, they're curtailing heavy rare earth mineral exports to Japan. China had done this before in 2010. They curtailed light rare earth minerals to Japan over a territorial dispute. Japan shore up that supply chain. And so what does China do? It doesn't go after light rare earths. It now goes after heavy rare earths. So, trying to answer this problem with shoring up supply chains is good and it's necessary, but China's always looking for the next thing that they could press you on.
So what do you think the president's strategy is now? We did confrontation, hit them with the fentanyl tariffs, backed off. When they said we're going to hold back rare earth, they agreed to put everything on hold and then agree to work out the kinks. And then the president and President Xi decide, let's meet together, and they're going to do it in March. What do you think the president's strategy is now?
I think at the core, the basic strategy is to continue to use the threat of tariffs to try to stave off China using critical minerals, trying to weaponize critical minerals. And this is kind of a holding pattern because the idea is eventually that the United States and like-minded countries will be able to develop to the best they can independent critical mineral supply chains so that they're no longer prone to Chinese threats of economic coercion. I think that's sort of the game plan right now. And so when we go into this summit this spring, there'll probably be a similar sort of ratcheting up of threats on both sides in the run-up to the meeting, and then some sort of interim agreement that might last for another year or so. But the last meeting basically bought a year, where China said we would not raise tariffs further, and they said that they would not hit on critical minerals. But this is only a temporary solution. In the long term, we've got to shore up these critical mineral supply chains. There's a critical mineral security partnership that both the Trump and the Biden administration have done. These are the things that are necessary to get out from under the this constant threat of coercion.
Do you think we're doing enough to get our own sources of rare earth between the deals we cut in Southeast Asia, the one in Australia, Argentina? I talked to Doug Burgum. He seems to see the urgency. Are you seeing it?
No, I think we are seeing it. I mean, I think this is a top priority for the administration. I think we're seeing it in their conversations with allies and partners, potential sources of critical minerals. And anywhere there are critical minerals, it's part of whatever bilateral meeting the president is doing with the leaders of those countries. So I think there's an urgency attached to it because, I think the idea is that within a decade, we want to get out from under this. Japan, as I said, in 2010, went on a major push to become less vulnerable to China on critical minerals. It took them about a decade to reduce their dependence by about 50%. So it may take less time for the United States, particularly if we work in partnership with other like-minded countries.
Headline in the New York Times today: the looming Taiwan chip disaster that Silicon Valley has long ignored. Why? Because Taiwan's making about 90+% of all our chips, and China's determined to take the island, claiming it as their own. Number one, their claim isn't authentic. They've never had the island. And number two, they seem obsessed with taking it, and that would certainly hurt certainly not be in our national interests.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's exactly right. If China were to take Taiwan, it would have a chokehold on, these high-end computer chips, semiconductor computer chips. China, Xi Jinping is in an increasingly precarious position. He's been purging some of his top generals, people that he put into place, which speaks both to the corruption in the PLA, but also to his own paranoia. And concern that people are, going to stab him in the back. But that also means that he's become much more aggressive in terms of these quarantine exercises that they've been doing around Taiwan. You can't even call these exercises. This is like practicing quarantine around Taiwan, basically to try to choke off Taiwan so they cry uncle in the end because they can't get anything into the island. But the strategic value of Taiwan, both in terms of shipping lanes, potentially being a permanent aircraft carrier for China if they ever were to get hold of it, as well as the chip issue, make this strategically very important. I think the good news is that the administration is very focused on this. The Pentagon is very focused on this. They've been building capabilities. But at the same time, the concern is that Xi Jinping may see his window of opportunity closing by 2027, and that creates a lot of concern.
I mean, at one point we'd still be waiting for AOC to answer the question, what do we do? I hope we are prepared to defend Taiwan. And I don't think he would do it with this president as president. That's what I don't think. But my hope is we're prepared to do this because the West will begin to just gradually lose grip and credibility and basically give the world over to China if we do.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on Taiwan that goes beyond, what's in Taiwan, the chip issue. In some research that we've done, we found that one of the most important indicators of U.S. general commitment to allies and partners in Asia and in Europe is what happens on Taiwan. U.S. credibility and strength in many ways rests on that. I mean, it's good in the sense that other countries in the region, Japan, Australia, the Philippines, South Korea, and others, really do understand what's at stake. In the past, they just saw it as a U.S. problem, but now they really do see it as something that can affect their very lives. So there's a lot more vigilance. We see defense spending increasing across Asia now. As the president has wanted, 3.5%, 5% defense spending is going up in places like Japan and Korea. Nuclear submarines, in Australia, also talk about that in South Korea. So things are happening now that are shoring up defense and deterrence that benefit the Taiwan Straits issue.
No, that is great. So Victor Cha, our guest, his book is now out, China's Weaponization of Trade, The Resistance Through Collective Resilience. So where's China vulnerable?
So what we found in the research we put into this book is that there are about 600 items that China trades with countries that it has coerced that are very important to its construction industry, to its solar panel industry, to a variety of industries. And if countries can work together, we can threaten retaliation if China continues to use economic coercion against any one of us, and that will deter them from using this as a tool, as they're doing to Japan today, as they're doing to us, as they've done to us on critical minerals, and as they've done to many American defense contractors, software companies, clothing companies, airlines, you just name it. Like, they've gone after everybody. But there is capability that the United States, Japan, Australia, and others have that could deter and stop this sort of activity.
It's pretty obvious, the products. What I also hear, too, is people don't buy anything. They need to sell their products 70% to us. So we are the consumers they need to sell, or else they're just going to be stuck with these products because they can't just, the billions of people in China don't buy the billions of items because they don't have a social safety net and they don't trust any excess spending money that they have. And they got a huge job issues, correct? They're out of make-work jobs.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, still the most important sort of consumer middle-class market is the United States. And China, while it's a big market for production, for cheaper production, in terms of consumption, it's not nearly as big, and China faces vulnerabilities there as well.
Do you think there's any chance of separating Russia and China at this point?
Right now, it seems pretty hard. China has been both keeping an arm's distance length away from Russia while behind the scenes continuing to supply them with microelectronics, all sorts of industrial capacity so they continue the war in Europe. But right now, these two seem to be brought even closer together, as we saw in the Victory Day celebrations that Xi Jinping hosted last fall, where he had Putin on one side and he had Kim Jong-un on the other side.
Are you concerned about Canada's newfound relationship with China?
Yeah, so I think there is a concern that the tariffs by the Trump administration are causing some of our allies and partners to look at what you might call Plan Bs, what else they could do if they can't rely on the United States. And this relationship between Canada and China is one manifestation of that. I don't think that means that we're pushing everybody into the arms of China, because nobody wants to be in the arms of China. They're just going to be squeezed to death if they do that. But it is a bit of hedging. by Carney, and we'll probably see European leaders do the same thing. But again, you can't get in bed on trade and economics with China because they steal technology.
Yes.
They use economic coercion. They'll try to steal technology. They'll enter into a joint venture. They will try to steal your technology. They will then domestically produce and dump on the open market to basically kill your industry. So nobody, they may be hedging a little bit by talking to China, but nobody's going to get fully in bed with China on investment and trade.
I know this, but this prime minister in Canada is a real piece of work. I don't know if he understands the dangers fully. I think it's taking it personal, and the hockey loss is not going to make him feel better. Victor Cha, congratulations on your book, China's Weaponization of Trade, Resistance Through Collective Resilience. Appreciate it, Victor, and thanks for what you do.
Thanks, Brian.
You got it. Back in a moment.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, anytime, everything is so political. We're athletes. We're so proud to represent the U.S. And when you get the chance to go to the White House, meet the president, we're proud to be Americans, and, that's so patriotic. So no matter what your views are, we're super excited to go to the White House tomorrow and just be a part of that.
Jack Hughes lost a few teeth, but got a goal and a gold medal. Will be in the State of the Union, being in chambers tonight at Congress, at the Capitol building, and might be one of the guests on with Brett Baer tonight. I know he's going to have a group of hockey players on, talking about Team USA, what they accomplished, why it was important for them to be here. We can't forget about the women whose accomplishment was just as significant. I was able to talk to Zach Wierenski this morning and Dylan Larkin. Here's my conversation with him on celebrating and talking about Johnny Gaudreau, who he was great friends with. Here's Zach, cut 44.
I think we thought about it for a while. I mean, his jersey was hanging all tournament. Obviously, I see his jersey hang a lot in Columbus every game. And then we saw them in the crowd after the game. It felt like it was super special. This is something John would have been at. And we wanted to make him proud and to have his kids on the ice, to celebrate with us. It just felt right. And just an incredible experience, an incredible moment. Obviously, it was our lifelong dream, but it was also John's, and we wanted to honor him the best way we could. So, yeah, just a super special thing that we could do, and to have his kids out there was pretty incredible.
He grabbed one of them, and Dylan Larkin grabbed the other, and they made sure that the guy who was going to make the team at 31 years old and was likely going to be captain, Johnny Gaudreau, who was killed on the side of a road while he was biking, him and his brother at the same time the day before his sister's wedding, was not forgotten on the team, and they weren't. They used it as inspiration, and of course they ended up with a 2-1 victory and a gold medal. They'll be honored tonight. We're great guys. The more you hear from them, the more you like them. And you know what? It's kind of cool that they love the country. Hi, everyone. So glad you're there. It's the Brian Kilmeade Show. I come to you from Washington, D.C. instead of Midtown Manhattan. But I know I left 31 inches behind in terms of snow. We got 0 here in Washington, the place of the State of the Union. But I'm thrilled to have with us John Roberts, co-anchor American Report shortly, and in studio, Markwayne Mullin, the Senator from Oklahoma, Armed Services Appropriations. And we're going to be talking about a lot that's going on today. We're following all the breaking news. The market's looking a lot better. We're back up 49,000, up 370 points. Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
In my judgment, we should do nothing to extend the life of this regime when we have an historic opportunity right now, given it's so weak and fragile, to finally set the conditions for a regime collapse.
There you go. General Jack Keane knows. Make the case, Mr. President. Remind America our 47-year enemy in Iran is about to be confronted, and let the nation know why. Meanwhile, 70% of the GOP get it, but many Dems and independents don't. Make the case and get ready to slay the Ayatollah and his death cult, hated by its own people. Sadly, nobody else will.
Number 2.
Everything is so political. We're athletes. We're so proud to represent the U.S. And when you get the chance to go to the White House, meet the president, we're proud to be Americans, and, that's so patriotic. So no matter what your views are, we're super excited to go.
Jack Hughes, he's a superstar. He scored the winning goal for the U.S. Olympic team, and he comes back triumphant. None bigger than the USA hockey team, by the way, and the women's team, which were phenomenal. Both beat Canada. Why this show of patriotism and pride in Milan is exactly what we need, and why so many others are upset by it.
Number 1.
I do plan to go to the State of the Union, and then I do hope all the other Democrats that choose to come that we don't do the same kinds of things that happened at the last year. You don't have to like the occupant, but respect that. We should be better than that.
Yep, that is John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania. State of the Union tonight. President Trump will run through his accomplishments, set this year's agenda. Expect Democratic antics, boycotts, tantrums as the GOP is looking to build momentum, which has been with the Dems of late, especially after that Friday Supreme Court decision. Now they feel as though that was a political gift. They're going to go to bat for small-town America, demand refunds from places in and around the country. And who knows, even go back to other countries. Already FedEx stepped up and said they'll sue the government to get refunds on the tariffs, and the president's responded. And I could hit you with a bunch of numbers and acts, but bottom line, for the next 3 months, there'll be global tariffs of 15%. John Roberts, I think you were on the air when that decision came down, weren't you?
I was, yes.
So it was interesting, a lot to digest right away, and man, was the president angry.
He was not happy, but they've had a plan B in place, and under Section 122 of the 1984 Act, 1984, 1974, can't remember.
I think it was in the 70s.
74, yeah. The Trade Act of 74, he's already implemented 15% tariff across the board, so he's finding an alternate way of doing it. He would have liked to have continued to do it under what's called IEEPA, but not allowed to do that, at least in the interim. The big question, though, is do we have to pay the tariffs back? And the Supreme Court left that an open question. And I think the president will do everything he can to try to not let that happen, but it's going to involve years of litigation.
Right, years of litigation in country and businesses, companies like FedEx saying, I want it back. Others will say they won't. Others will use this as an opportunity to say, yes, they will. We'll see what happens. What about individual small businesses, like a toy company in the Midwest that had to pay expanded tariffs from maybe get their dolls and their toys from other countries?
I think what you're seeing is a coalition of companies brought together under one umbrella organization that are seeking restitution for the tariffs that they paid. Again, it's going to go to litigation. I know that the boat manufacturers in the United States were hit really hard by tariffs. It was really squeezing their business. Might they seek compensation?
If they make it here
because
in the United States?
They get a lot of parts from overseas. They make the boats here in the United States. They lay up the fiberglass and everything. But parts for the engines come from overseas. Other marine parts come from overseas. So while they might lay up the basics of the boat, probably a lot of the fiberglass components come in from overseas as well. I just know, because I know some people. I've got friends in the boating industry. And they say that they were really hit hard by the tariffs. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if they go after a restitution or not. But again, the president pointed this out the other day, that this is going to be tied up in the courts. He said for a couple of years. I think more like a couple of decades.
Well, what do you think it does for the trade deals that are in place or framed out?
Nothing, I don't think.
Because the EU is waiting now 4 months. India canceled their trip over here. So to me,
you could make a point that the companies will say, the countries rather will say, hey, these trade deals were crafted under duress. Under the threat of additional tariffs on top of what we were already paying. But I think the president's pretty confident that most of the trade deals that were crafted in recent months will stay in place the way they are, and I think they probably will.
And one thing you would think, John Roberts, is perhaps there is a new impetus to do it quickly. Whatever's left, whether it's Brazil or nations in Africa, whatever's left, Indonesia, who just came in, by the way, they just did their trade deal. So if you get that done quickly, little by little, the amount of countries paying this 15% tariffs will be less and less.
Possibly. We'll see how this all goes going forward. I think it's an open question right now. I thought we were going to be talking hockey, not trade.
We are. We're going to get there. Democrats have the momentum right now, would you say?
To some degree, they do. I think if you look at recent polling in the midterm elections, I think 52% of people said that they would vote Democrat versus 40-something for the Republicans. But things could change. Now that Minnesota and ICE are not the total focus of the news cycle, and Democrats really can't lean on that, people are looking at economic issues. And I think the president, according to several publications and from what we've seen, has got a pretty good case to make that the economy is on the right track for growth this year, even though there was a contraction at the end of last year because of the government shutdown.
I want you to hear a little of what the president's message will be, and then the response from Governor Gary Beshear and Kevin Kiley, a Republican. Cut one.
You notice, what word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won. I've won affordability.
If he thinks he has won affordability and the American people aren't struggling, bring that on. Campaign in each of those states and say it, because it's not the reality.
I think that he should rightly note areas where we've seen big improvements, while also addressing the fact that affordability is still a huge issue for many people across the country.
Well, a couple of things. That's pretty clear. I think the one thing, if you're looking for a strategy, I would love for the Democrats to be forced to say, what would they do to make things more affordable?
Well, you take a look at the last 4 years as well. Did they do anything to make things more affordable?
Rebuke that and tell me what you'll do.
Exactly. And you have to disassociate yourself from the Biden years, which saw 10% inflation, gas prices increased 42%. The price of everything went up under Biden. It's coming down to a large degree under Trump. So he's got a pretty good economic story to tell. But remember, Biden would always look at this through rose-colored glasses. Yes. And he'd tell people, oh, no, the economy's doing great. Doesn't matter what you're really feeling and the fact you can't put food on the table. The economy's doing great. I think President Trump is probably more in tune with working-class people and the struggle that they have to make ends meet, put food on the table, put clothes on their kids, keep a roof over their head. And he's doing a lot of things to try to make it more affordable, including now the tax impact of the big, beautiful bill. People are going to be getting more money back with the refunds from the end of the year. But it's still a big question because a lot of people still are not feeling it. Gas prices coming down is a very good thing because on every street corner, now you're seeing, with the exception of California, of course, you're seeing gas below $3 a gallon. And in some cities, you're seeing it below $2.50 a gallon. And that makes people feel good.
Yeah.
If you're looking at gas and you're saying, wow, I can afford an entire tank of gas, that makes people feel pretty good.
You were covering the president every day for 4 years in the first term. What's the big difference?
Some days felt like they were a week long.
It never ended, right?
What's the big difference? I don't think there is a difference. Other than back then, it was all new to him. And so there was a lot of discovery going on. He also had a lot of people in his ear saying, no, Mr. President, we can't do it this way. That's changed because he's got loyalists in most places now. There are probably still a few people who are saying, I don't think we should look at it this way. We should look at it that way. But for the most part, he's got people in there who are supporting his ideas, not without question, but they're offering full support for his ideas. And that's a big change from the first term. And they
keep their jobs.
Yeah, and they keep their jobs. That's a big change from the first term where he had people actively working against him.
What do you think the backlash is of Kash Patel going to the locker room and celebrating with the guys?
I mean, personally, I don't think it was a good look.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing for the FBI director to go in there and in a very sort of sober way say congratulations. The beer showers, it's a part of a celebration, but maybe a little overboard.
So Selena,
I don't want to say too much because I don't want the FBI knocking on my door.
Right, and I think so. I've got to know Kash Patel. I know he's a great guy. He got caught up in it. You see a lot of super fans out there. He's one of them. I also know he was going to Islander games before he was FBI director. He's a huge hockey guy.
Yeah,
but he was caught up in it. And you combine that with Patriot.
Going over there to watch the game. If he wanted to watch the game, there's one way he can travel on the FBI jet. He can't say, look, I'm going to go fly ITA or Alitalia.
Yeah.
It can't happen. He's got to go on the FBI jet.
So I thought this was a good comeback from Selena Zito. She writes, with all the hysteria over Kash Patel invited by U.S. hockey players to join them in celebration how about Anthony Blinken's rocking in the free world moment, signing and playing guitar at a popular bar in Kyiv, saying the United States is with you?
As a guitar player myself, I could appreciate going up on stage and, strumming a few notes here and there. But it's similar in tone, in scope. Maybe Milan went a little further.
Right. I agree. I was surprised to see it. I know it was pure. And I know one thing about the president out of all that, the drinking. The president doesn't like the drinking. He's not a fan of alcohol. I know with his family, they better not drink. If they're going to have a glass of wine, they better not be in front.
I don't want to say he's a teetotaler because he probably wouldn't agree with the term, but he has never apparently taken a drink of alcohol, which I think is to his credit. I think we'd all be better off that way. I mean, life might not be as much fun, but...
When he said it, can you imagine if I drank? Can you imagine how crazy I'd be?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the hockey team. You're from Canada, and you know what Canada...
And in fact, Jack Hughes used to play on a team that is headquartered in the town that I grew up in, the Mississauga Steelheads.
Wow. So him and his brother are in the NHL. His brother, was it Jack, the number one pick overall to the New Jersey Devils, or was it Quinn? I'm not sure which one it was.
I don't know. That's getting way deep in the
But man, they
woods.
look young. And it's just amazing how
and Jack's
how
the older
exuberant they
brother.
are. Yeah, how exuberant they are and how pure it seems. And I know some of them are going to be on with Brett tonight, but a couple of things. Number one, in Canada, it is hockey and nothing else. I heard Wayne Gretzky saying that, America, I live here now. You got 5 major sports. He goes, in Canada, it's all about hockey. And they're just devastated. How do you feel about it?
I used to joke that when a baby is delivered in Canada, the gynecologist pulls the baby out by the skate blades.
Right. Yeah, that's a great line.
Because literally, when I grew up in Canada.
So are they crushed?
Oh, are they crushed? Oh, yeah, they're absolutely crushed. Particularly since, if it weren't for Hellebuck, that would have been a 4-1, 5-1 game for Canada. I mean, the president should consult him on missile defense.
Right.
That guy, literally lets nothing through.
Well, and which is so interesting. I looking at his timeline. They said, he wasn't picked out as a junior. He wasn't a high draft pick.
He was like Brady. He was passed over.
Yeah, and he matured late. And I was listening to one of these scouts talk, and they were saying that he hopes it's a lesson that stop picking these guys at 16 and decide who's going to be successful. Because hockey players, more than any other, are picked out early, thrown into the juniors, taken away from their families, billeted, and they're off. And he says a lot of times just be a little patient. And now you have a 31-year-old who's the best goalie in the world.
But it's
and
like
3 times he won goalie.
But it's like any sport. What was Brady? 188 in the draft?
Yeah.
And became the best quarterback in NFL history. Hellebuck was passed over a number of times, came up through the minors, eventually ended up with the Winnipeg Jets, and he's the best goalie, literally since Jacques Plante, I think.
But you do remember, was it the first period where right at the end of the period, you saw one of the Americans hit both posts at the same time, ricochet off both posts. I mean, there was a lot of close.
To me, the most, other than Hellebuck's performance, which was just stellar. I mean, he's won the Vezina Trophy before, but
3 times.
There's got to be some award that he could get for that performance. But other than Hellebuck's performance, the other thing that just blew my mind was the 5-on-3 double penalty defense.
Watch that.
And the fact that Canada was not able to score was just absolutely remarkable.
I want a couple of minutes we only have a couple minutes at the end, but real quick, I love the 3-on-3 in overtime. As a soccer guy,
very fast paced, yeah.
It ends with penalty kicks. I'm like, why don't you pull 2 players off the field? Because it changes the game. Who's got endurance? Who's better with a little bit of room?
And it opens up the game too.
And also, that's a coaching move. Who works best together? If you have a great offensive player that doesn't play defense, you can't put him on the ice. Right? So it just, to me, would bring more strategy to soccer, which is about to come, and you're going to be so frustrated to watch this team play for 90 minutes, then an additional 2 overtimes, and have maybe the best team in the world be decided on penalty kicks, as if you could do basketball on free throws. So I just had to get off my chest.
Well, and it's the same thing with lacrosse, whether you got 10v10 or 12v12 on a big, long field versus sixes, which is the format that they play in the PLL and the format that they're going to play in the Olympics. Sixes is a so much faster, so much more interesting game. And I think it's more fun for the players, too.
Lacrosse going to be in the Olympics?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Back in a moment.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
That is the ridiculous remarks from Gavin Newsom. And he's saying, it's nothing to do with racist. How dare you call me out? Everybody heard that and thought this is the death knell to your political career. At the very least, requires an apology and clarification. And Cornell West, John Roberts, has put this out just now. Brother Newsom could have taken a humanistic approach. He could have said, I'm like you. I was born a woman. I'll face loss, pain, and death just like anyone else. But instead, what he thinks of black people is he brings up low SAT scores. The mindset sits in the core. As he continues, the mindset sits in the core of white supremacy, the belief that black people are less beautiful, less moral, less intelligent. Don't play with us like that, Governor of California.
You know what? That puts Cornell West and Nicki Minaj
together
on the same page.
She had something similar.
Yeah, Senator Tim Scott also said that what Newsom said was just like beyond the pale. Like, why do you go down that road? You know, as opposed to just saying, look, I'm like you. I get up every day out of bed. I put my pants on one leg at a time, or, you know, for those of you of a different gender, I sometimes dress in a skirt as well. Ha, ha, ha,
Right.
get a laugh. But he goes for the scores on the SAT and the fact that, well, I'm not a very good reader. On his podcast not long ago, he said he read somebody's book in an hour and a half. So, I mean, he's obviously a fairly good reader, even though he professes not to be one.
So there's a reporter at Real Clear Politics who said, Susan Crabtree, who just said, can you show me any paperwork that shows you're dyslexic? And they said basically, F you. And that's the comeback from his communications director.
Yeah, well, that's typically the comeback.
I wonder if there is any.
If it's not F Trump, it's F you. I mean, what's up with these Democrats in the swearing?
We're going to listen to you from 1 to 3. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, you can listen to me and Sandra Smith, who finally made it back from her vacation.
America Reports on Fox News.
My current plan is to attend. We're not going to Donald Trump's house. He's coming to our house. It's my view that you don't let anyone ever run you off of your block. The two options that are in front of us in our house is to either attend with silent defiance or to not attend and send a message to Donald Trump in that fashion.
All right. Well, I wish you would talk slower. That is the Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, talking about the antics that could be taking place. With me right now is Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Senator, you were there last year.
Right.
I mean, I was in the gallery. I watched the craziest thing. I thought I was at a WWE event, and Al Green with his waving his cane, the screaming, the popsicle signs that were up there saying horrible things. What do you expect to happen tonight?
More political theater, unfortunately. And you know what Hakeem is saying about it's our house. It's the people's house. It's not his house. And by the way, when you have a guest come over to your house, you invite them, and the president is invited to do the State of the Union. He's not just simply coming in as a stranger. The order for the president to speak to the joint session has to be an invitation from the House, from Congress to come in there. So he's an invited guest, and you should behave as such. I didn't agree with Barack Obama, I promise you. I didn't agree with Joe Biden, I promise you. But I never acted like this. And for the fact that he's wanting to say we should protest.
Right.
This goes all the way back to Nancy Pelosi in the first term when the State of the Union was over, and she picked up the speech and tore it.
Which, by the way, if the president saw, I wonder if he ever saw it. What do you think he would have done?
Probably winked at her. I mean, honestly, because
classless.
Yes, he would have just winked at her. He wouldn't have done anything. Just like he is okay. You're tough. You know, that's the way he would have addressed it. Hakeem, I think it's nice that he said that, you know, you should silently protest or don't attend. But he knows exactly what they're going to do, because all these Democrats, Brian, they're up in the primary fight, and most of these Democrats are fighting in the primary election, not a general election, and their base
more than ever.
And their base wants them to be disruptive. Their base, they wouldn't be speaking this ridiculous rhetoric and behaving the way they are if they didn't think their base liked it. And so I would expect those that are going to attend, not all, but a lot of the ones that are going to attend are going to try having more political theater.
Senator Markwayne Mullin, here's what the ABC Washington Post poll said on disapproval. 57% of the country disapprove of the economy, 58 immigration, 64 tariffs, 65 inflation. If those polls are remotely accurate, how does that affect the strategy tonight and your strategy?
I don't think, it's not my strategy, it's the president's. I don't think it affects it at all. The president's going to come out and I wouldn't say do a victory lap, but talk about what has been accomplished in the last year. You think about the border. President Joe Biden said that he needed Congress to act. Congress didn't act, and President Trump used the laws that were already on the books to secure the border, the most secure border we've had in decades. Not a single person has been released in months into the United States. He could talk about the inflation going from a 9.1 high to 2.4%. Talk about energy costs coming down. Talking about the jobs that have been created, real take-home pay, the biggest tax cut in history being passed by Congress, and people are going to be seeing that on their tax returns. He can talk about the amount, the trillions of dollars that have been invested into the United States by onshoring manufacturing again. And he can talk about the wars that he stopped. So the president has to talk about that, Brian, and then he needs to talk about what tomorrow looks like.
So I know there's going to be some things that people are going to like. It's going to be hard for Democrats to sit down. He's going to introduce the injured pilot that got his almost leg blown off in Venezuela in that operation. He's going to have a World War II vet there, talk about great moments in American history that got us to 250. And, of course, he's going to have the USA hockey team, who's going to be on the second floor of the gallery. I imagine either he gets them out early so they can go back to their NHL teams, or he leaves them to the end with a dramatic walk-in. What do you think?
I think they're going to walk in, do their waves, and probably get back out. You've been there. It's very limited seating.
I know.
And
I couldn't believe how small it was.
Yeah, and then to add 25 people, which is a hockey
25
team.
Coming?
I've been told all 25 are coming, and I will depend on who shows up. But I've been told they're all going to be there. So I don't know if they'll actually be able to stay because of the seating situation. I think the Democrats are going to stay seated. Listen, if you didn't stand up for that young boy that they made an FBI agent,
beat cancer, wanted to be an FBI agent.
If they didn't stand up for him, and you remember how many of them stayed seated on that. What are you going to stand up for?
I think maybe Senator Fetterman would have gotten up. I don't know if he was healthy enough to be there last year, but he's somebody that is a breath of fresh air. When you think what's going to be happening in the second term, what do you think is going to be queued up as an agenda item that you guys could try to pass feasibly or through reconciliation is probably your only option? Do you have Senator Kennedy's talking about another budget bill?
Yeah, budget's going to be. We got to do the budget. Obviously, I don't think you can do a big reconciliation bill through budget. I think healthcare could be reconciliation when you start talking about prescription drugs, start talking about PBMs, talking about bringing in a competitive markets again. I think you could see that, and that's a real issue. The economy, because that's take-home pay, right? That's everybody has to have health care. Everybody's trying to deal with that, and the economy is going to be the big focus. When you start talking about immigration, there's a lot of stuff through the administration the president can address with immigration. I believe we could see that action being taken.
I think you could do something. I think you could do comprehensive immigration reform, because not before the midterms, but I think after, because you did the impossible. Seal the border. It's impossible to talk about it without sealing the border.
You had to seal the border before you'd have immigration.
And there's some things you guys agree on. Some things aren't controversial.
Yeah. Well, there's some stuff you can do with a visa. The Democrats are so far off on this, Brian. They want amnesty, or they don't want to talk about anything else. And that's very difficult. So the starting point,
you can give them the Dreamers.
So you could, even the Dreamers amnesty would still be a topic. Well, that's devastating on our part, and which I say our part, some of our party, and it's difficult for the Democrats to give the president any win. Remember, he tried to do this with Nancy Pelosi, but you could do it through a legal status. So say you take the DACA, the Dreamers, and you give them a 2-year visa for those that have not had any criminal background, no felonies. Give them a 2-year temporary visa that'll automatically go to 5-year. That's 7-year probation, and then give them a LPR, limited or a legal permanent residence.
Okay.
Without having citizenship. And then if Congress wants to act later and give them citizenship, then they can at a later time. But let's take care of that now. And that's something that they could do through administratively, I believe. We're talking through that process actually last week.
Kind of interesting. In the SAVE Act, any Democrats want to roll up their sleeves and give input to that might make it palatable, even though 70% of Democrats and more are for voter ID?
John Fetterman is the only one that's come out publicly about this. Now, 37 states already have this in the union, so only 13 it doesn't. Well, there's a lot more Democrats in those 37 states than people may think. If this comes to the floor, which we're going to bring it to the floor, John Thune has already said he's going to do that, Leader Thune. It'll be interesting on how the Democrats vote on this. I don't think we'll get to 60. I believe we could get to 52, 53 on a low end, and we could get as many as 57 on the vote. I don't think we can hit 60. Then we got to figure out how we're going to address that, and we could do it through a talking filibuster.
I do want to talk about Iran, but just going back to hockey for a second. People are upset the president called. I see Huffington Post had a stamp. Is anyone sick of hearing about the red, white, and blue and how much people love their country? Dave Portnoy of Barstool said this is the point of craziness. Cut 17.
This should be a barometer of whether you're a psychopath. If the president calls after you win the gold medal, I don't care. If you don't want to talk to him, fine, you don't have to. But to get mad when you talk to the president of the United States and he's just congratulating him, chumming around, both teams are going to the State of the Union. If this speech made you mad, you need to take a Valium and maybe just take 1,000 steps back.
He's absolutely correct. By the way, he's got good pizza advice, too.
I heard that.
But no, he's absolutely correct. I mean, who would get upset about the President of the United States calling his athletes? I mean, he's the President of the United States. His athletes mean the Olympians because they represent all of us, and the President Trump represents us all. For people to get upset by that, I mean, come on, give me a break. And by the way, my wife is such a fangirl now of the hockey team, but of the Hughes family as a whole. She can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
well, just and the sister
too,
and the brother and then the mom being a hockey player. She constantly is sending me Instagram reels and want me to watch them, and then she gets upset when I don't watch them and don't respond. I'm like, babe, I can't watch them all.
So I want you to talk about a guy that lost his mind. How about Robert De Niro sitting down in a podcast on MS Now talking about Trump? Cut 47.
You're always about lifting up everybody around you, everybody.
Of course.
Why is that?
You have to. You have to lift people up.
Why?
You have to bring them together. You can't divide people. You can't win that way. It's a no-win situation. Look who we have there. It's almost like a destiny to have this thing there, attempting to destroy this country, and maybe not even understanding why. So it's up to us to protect the country
that we love.
Yes.
You weren't supposed to make me cry. Thank you so much. Thank you for this.
Thank you for crying for me.
I don't know.
Do you believe this guy?
No, and you can't argue with crazy, and unfortunately, that's where he is today. And I was a fan of his, and I wish he'd just stick to his lane. But what did President Trump destroy? What is it that he's specifically talking about? It's easy to have those words, but give me examples. Don't talk about emotional because you emotionally are distraught by President Trump. Give me an example. What has the president done? Did he destroy our border like Biden? No, he restored it. Did he destroy our manufacturing like has happened over the last 30 years? No, he's actually bringing manufacturing back. Did he destroy the ability for individuals to vote? No, he's actually bringing in voter rights again, because we saw this in Georgia. Remember when Georgia said that the voter turnout was going to be suppressed? The voter at the passed voter ID, and we actually saw it increase the next time we had a federal election. And no, the president is restoring hope. He's restoring America again, and you can see that in our military. You can see that with the retention and with those that are volunteering in our volunteer service. So those that are willing to protect his right to be stupid and say those things are the people that he's saying that President Trump is destroying. I don't get it.
And so every late night host feels like him. Jimmy Kimmel cries every night about Trump.
Yeah.
Senator Markwayne, not much of a crier, if I can quote the President of the United States on Chuck Schumer. Back in a moment talking about another speech the president's got to give, and that's why we need to take out Iran, because I believe we do. Don't move.
But can we just admit here that regime change and nation building is not our core competency? That we spent 20 years, trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives. Both of them turned out poorly. I fought those wars. Again, millions of Americans fought those wars. The appetite for this type of military adventurism in the United States, when people can't afford their homes, can't afford groceries, is close to zero.
So that is Jason Crow. To his credit, he is a military guy, special forces, says regime change and occupation. We're not doing that. He described a conflict that's not going to take place. With me right now is Senator Markwayne Mullin. Where is Congressman Jason Crow wrong, if at all, when it comes to our objective and possible military operations in Iran?
Well, Jason has had the ability. I can't say he's been read in, but he knows this isn't about regime change. And that's what the biggest joke is about this. If this is about regime change, the president would already taken them out. During the 12-day war, the president was very clear. He says, we know where you're at. And if he chose to, meaning Jason Crow, if Jason Crow chose to get read in on what he meant by, you know, where we're at, he would know that we knew where he was at, plus the rest of or a tremendous amount of their leadership team. He chose not to do that because the president doesn't want to create a vacuum. He doesn't want to have the same issue that we did underneath Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama when they had the Arab Spring, and we created a civil war in Syria and Lebanon and Libya that is still going on to some degree. We understand that greatly, but we can never allow Iran, the world sponsor of terror, to have a nuclear weapon in that region. They'll destabilize the entire region.
Right.
Think about the Suez Canal. Think about OPEC oil. By the threat of them having that, they would literally be able to handcuff the world economy and cause destabilization around the world.
I'm worried about a nuclear deal because that means we've got to release some sanctions. And the nuclear program, despite what Steve Witkoff said, has been they're trying to rebuild it, but it was obliterated. Almost everyone agreed with it. So I don't know why Steve Witkoff just said it. They're a week away. That makes no sense to me. I'm pretty sure he's not a nuclear scientist.
And we wouldn't be there, Brian, if they wouldn't start rebuilding. The president was hoping that diplomacy would work after the 12-day war, and the fact that they've started rebuilding will tell you, one, we're going to destroy it, and if you continue to do it, then we will take out leadership. What we would love to see is Iranian people, a leader to rise up like President al-Sharari in Syria, and once they do, then we will build a hedge of protection around that individual, but no one has risen up in Iran, but we still like to see a free Iran.
But we see some courage, don't we?
We see a lot of courage. See what's happening to universities right now. I mean, think about that.
To think about that. Nothing in their hands. They have no weapons, and they're still standing up, knowing between 7,000 and 30,000 were killed. And I ask you, the American people, we can't be the world's policemen, but we're the only one that can help this country that has made us their number one enemy. Remember the Ayatollah. Right. Death to America isn't a slogan. It is a policy. And they're trying to assassinate our president, the Khobar Towers, the 83 Beirut bombing, the killing of our troops, and the maiming of them in Iraq. We know they just sent a drone at one of our ships 2 weeks ago.
Right. And that's not going to stop. This has been their policy since 1979. But for us, what we have to realize is this isn't necessarily a world peace either. This is about stabilizing our economy too. Our economy reacts to what happens in the Middle East because our economy is tied to what happens around the world. And if the stabilization is going to take place, it's going to take place because of the might of the United States. The president believes in peace through strength. Like I said, it is not taking out the Ayatollah. It's about taking out their nuclear program. However, if the Ayatollah continues down this path, then we will take out the Ayatollah.
And for people who are going to panic and say you don't kill out a religious leader, what happened when Israel killed Nasrallah? Much more popular, much more charismatic. Well, absolutely nothing. He's buried in rubble.
I'll push back on a religious leader. A religious leader would want to teach peace, not chant death to America. And so I think there's a huge difference between that.
Right. So the Axios is reporting, the New York Times has it, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kane, was all in on Venezuela, but he thinks there's great risk and not as confident in Iran. And Senator Tom Cotton believes that there's some people within the administration are pushing back against military operations there, let alone the podcast crowd. What are you comfortable saying?
Well, I have talked to the president about it, and I've talked to a lot of people in the administration. No one has whispered that to me. And Chairman Kane, General Kane, the president has a tremendous amount of trust on. And I don't believe there's any daylight at all between him and the president.
And he's right to be concerned. It's not easy.
Well, what the chairman's responsibility is, and he told me this, and so did Secretary Hegseth, is to provide the president options. And once the president, the commander-in-chief, makes a decision, then we will deliver perfection on behalf of the United States of America. But right now, he says, I've got to provide option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Actually, he says A, B, C, D, and he says now I'm working on E. And every one of those have a different footprint on what it leaves in Iran.
Most people think the limited strike that's been written about first is not a good move. What does Senator Markwayne Mullin think?
I think it's there's people that's going to be in the situation room making that decision, and I probably won't be one, although I'd love to be.
But I'm sure you'll be right in it, and I'm sure the president's going to ask your opinion, which is important.
Maybe.
Yes, he will. Right. Senator Markwayne Mullin, always great to have you on in this quality time. We appreciate it, and so does the audience.
Thank you.